Welcome back to Tiny Little Folklore Part 2. If you haven't had a chance to listen to last week's episode, be sure to check it out as we cover Duendes, Aluxes, and Leprechauns. This week, we're taking a peek into Norse culture on a search for dwarves and elves, as well as getting into some lore behind Hawaii's Menehune, and closing things out with the Slavic tales of the Domovoi. Buckle up as we get into more Little Trouble in Big Alaska. All that and more after the intro. We'll see you on the inside. You are now entering the realm of the Freaky Deaky, an unsuspecting stop at the crossroads of fantasy and reality, where the frayed edges of make-believe seep into this cookie-cutter white picket world you've been led to believe is far from extraordinary. What you're about to hear are true stories.
Alleged true stories.
Christian, just... okay? Tales of the strange and inexplicable thought only to exist in film and folklore. Although difficult to accept, we do not know everything about this reality, about time or space, what lies beneath the ocean's depths. And try though we might, the unchanging truth remains. There are some things we legitimately cannot explain logically. Folks, welcome back to the show. You know where you are. I'm not going to introduce anything. If you're here for the first time, welcome. We ask one thing of you, and that's that you check out the episode in its entirety. If you're a fan of what you hear, you slap a 5-star review on that bad boy, as it is the main way to help us get the word out to the nations. If you'd like to support the show in other ways, you can donate via the website, freakydeaky.com, or you can purchase some of the dopest merch in all the land. And I actually have to get back to Jose about, he was talking about possibly helping with some of that, pushing some of the merch out there, getting the eyes out, the word out. Jose, you're hearing this in the middle of March, and if I haven't gotten to you by now, please reach back out and we can get something going on that. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can find us at Freaky Deaky Pod, pretty much wherever. Join the Facebook group, suggest episode ideas, share some of your own personal paranormal experiences, or just tell us how weird we look, like everyone on YouTube does. So, if you haven't seen what we look like in reality, you can head over to YouTube and subscribe, plant a little comment saying, hey, look, a couple of bridge trolls started a podcast, or whatever else you want to say. Really, anything helps tickle that algorithm. So,
I'm not a bridge troll.
You're afraid of bridge trolls, but
yes,
you're not
I am.
one. Yeah, there is some clarification that needs to be made there, and that's fine.
It's a childhood fear.
It's an adulthood fear, too.
Is it?
Yeah. You don't want, you just, who wants to be attacked or riddled by a bridge troll, you know?
Yeah, but I'm okay going over the bridge now. I didn't
That's
used to
because
be.
nothing's happened. Wait for something to happen, and then we'll be right back to your childhood.
True.
It takes one tiny little instance. Anyway, thanks for coming back, everyone, for part 2 of Tiny Little Folklore. We're going to start things out with dwarves and elves of the Norse cultures.
So Legolas and Gimli.
Okay. Yes, this is Lord of the Rings, Chapter 1.
Which a lot is based on Norse mythology.
Well, there you go. Everyone got what you're trying to say. Anyway, dwarves and elves of Norse mythology are two of the most fascinating and enduring elements of the ancient Norse cosmology. Known for their distinct roles and abilities, these beings present different aspects of the spiritual and natural worlds that the Norse revered. While dwarves are often associated with craftsmanship, wisdom, and subterranean realms, elves are linked to beauty, nature, and light. Together, they reflect the Norse belief in a rich, interconnected universe populated by powerful and mystical entities. In Norse mythology, dwarves are small, stocky beings known for their unmatched skill in crafting and metalwork. Dwelling in underground forges and caverns, they are credited with creating some of the most important artifacts in Norse lore, including Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Did I say that right?
Mjolnir?
Mjolnir?
Yeah.
Okay. For whatever reason, I thought it was something different.
What'd you think it was?
I couldn't even say, but I didn't think there was a J in there. Or no, I thought there was an I before the O, like Milnir or something like that.
That's what you just said. Mjolnir.
No, I'm saying Mjolnir. What I thought it was you know what? We're going to move fast. Odin's spear, Gungnir. Gungnir. Wow, could you guys make it any more difficult from a California weird surfer boy? And the golden ring, Dropnir. Their craftsmanship symbolize. Apologies to our Norse listeners for butchering every single one of those. Their craftsmanship symbolizes creativity and the transformative power of the Earth's resources as they forge precious items from raw materials found in their subterranean homes. Dwarves are also depicted as cunning and knowledgeable, often possessing wisdom beyond that of the gods or humans. However, they can be morally ambiguous, capable of deceit or cruelty when crossed. Despite their smaller stature, they command immense respect, as their creations often have the power to shape the fate of gods and mortals alike. Their connection to the earth and the underworld also ties them to themes of death and transformation, highlighting their significance in the broader Norse cosmology. Elves, or Alfar, probably nailed that.
You did not nail that.
Alfar. Wow, beautifully said, Scott. Thank you. More on that later. Are ethereal beings associated with beauty, light, and the natural world. They are divided into two categories in Norse mythology. Oh, God damn. Okay. The Losovafar.
You're the one that put this together.
I know. And I was like, I'm sure I can pronounce those on the fly. The Losolfar, the LJ Osofar. You know what? I'm just going to say light elves. And who dwell in the heavenly realm, and the Alfheim, and the Dokolfar, or dark elves, who are often linked to the earth. I'm not going to apologize anymore for pronouncing things wrong, okay? You guys know what you did to me, and that's that, all right? The end. Who are often linked to the earth or the underworld. The light elves are radiant and benevolent, often assisting gods and humans, while the dark elves are more mysterious and ambiguous, sometimes associated with mischief or harm. The light elves in particular are tied to fertility, growth, and the life-giving forces of nature. They are seen as guardians of beauty and harmony, embodying an idealized vision of the natural world. Their appearance is often described as glowing or otherworldly, emphasizing their connection to the divine. Rituals and offerings were sometimes made to elves to seek their favor, particularly for blessings of health, prosperity, or fertile lands. Both dwarves and elves play critical roles in Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, symbolizing the duality and complexity of the cosmos. Dwarves embody the practical and transformative aspects of creation, using their skill to shape the material world. Elves, on the other hand, represent the spiritual and ethereal, highlighting the beauty and vitality of life.
And they're sexy as hell.
That is true, yeah.
At least in Tolkien's. Well, I guess Tolkien would be wrong since it's the movie I'm thinking of.
True. Yeah, we don't know what Tolkien
was
picturing.
Peter Jackson.
There you go. Thanks, Peter Jackson, for making Agent Smith so damn sexy.
Agent Smith is a different franchise.
Well, Agent Smith he's Agent Smith across the board.
Oh,
okay?
I get what you're saying now. I get it. Okay. The actor.
You thought I thought Agent Smith was in Lord of the...
That was like the actor. Okay, yeah. I get it.
Exactly. Together, they reflect the Norse belief and balance between light and dark, physical and spiritual, the interconnectedness of all realms. These beings also demonstrate the Norse fascination with liminal spaces, something we also kind of talked about with the Celtic, the thresholds between worlds where magic and mystery reside. Dwarves, emerging from the earth, and elves, descending from the celestial realms, represent the links between humans, the gods, and the natural forces that govern existence. Their presence in myth serves as a reminder of the Norse reverence for both the tangible and intangible aspects of life. So, we got a couple of trickster dwarf stories. I didn't really look too deep for elf stories. I figured, we'll do dwarves. At some point, I'm sure we'll do specific episodes filled with just stories from these specific entities we're going over. But for the time being, we don't really have time to dive into too many stories. So each of these cultures gets like one or two stories, and then we move on to the next. But if there's something that you guys hear that you're particularly fascinated with, be sure to comment that or give your thoughts or whatever, and we can look into that in the future for its own bona fide episode. I'm going to get some of this lemon water right quick. Christian, you can give your thoughts while I'm slurping this down.
I don't think the elves or the dwarves would like lemon water. I think it would be kind of a unique taste to them.
Really weird thoughts to give, but that's fine. We'll get into this first story, and it's called Beckoned by a Dwarf, and it's by Shiny Original Kid 77. It says, when I was a little kid, probably around 4 or 5, I would see this little dwarf in my backyard through the back window. He looked almost like a dwarf from Snow White, but older and not cute. Hey, ain't that the truth, you know?
I feel like I've seen a dwarf before or something similar. I feel like that just
I'm going to need you to pull that memory up by the end of this story.
I don't think I'm going to be able to, but we'll get back to it.
Search your heart. Search your heart and your mind. He used to like beckon me outside to play, or when I was already in the backyard, he would try to lead me up the stairs to a workout room my dad had separate from the house. I never followed him because he scared me.
Who would put a workout room upstairs? I guess it would be a workout room without heavy weights.
Possibly. I've seen people build like tiny houses that are workout rooms. You know, like they put up a shed or whatever and just turn it into a gym. And those are people that are much better with their hands than your boy. Otherwise, I would have done the same thing. That's beside the point. You don't care about that. You're like, who is this guy and why is he talking about workout rooms? Anyway.
Bro.
Yeah, bro. When I told my mom about it, she just kind of brushed me off and said there was no one there. And I never told my dad because he was always at work when I would see him. Recently, I was talking to my dad about paranormal experiences and I told him about the dwarf, and he said that he always felt really off in the workout room and hardly ever used it because it was so creepy.
That was the pre-workout.
There you go. Anyway, my question is, does anyone have any theories on what this could have been? Now,
It's just your imagination.
Wow. Classic.
I am wrong.
There is an interesting amount of stories that all take place in the backyard and all include kids looking out the window and being beckoned outside by something they can only describe as a gnome or a dwarf. And that is fascinating to me. I don't know.
See,
they got him. There's a dwarf choking him.
that's kind of, and I think it's just my memory kind of messing with me a little bit, but I feel like it was something similar to that, like something in my yard that I saw.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Why do children like me see this and not generally the adults? And what's the message behind a troll or a dwarf or some
Magic.
little person wanting to play with a child? And
Play is an interesting term for that because the feeling that comes across from a lot of these things is malicious. It's like luring you outside.
See, I don't feel that at all. I feel like it's a trickster. But when you hear some of these stories, they're not as scary as some of the stories we go over. They might be like, or maybe not as terrifying. Maybe scary would work.
Yeah.
But you don't hear like the dwarf came and took my child away, or the little person abducted,
Wasn't there something we covered within the last few months here that was someone being lured outside?
You know what?
Being found in the barn or something like that?
You have been powering through these episodes so quickly that I can't keep track of them. It's like, I'm like just having a nice relaxing day, and Scott's like, what are you doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or what time do you work? And he's like, come and record. And I'm like,
I worry about kind of doxing ourselves on the calendar right now. But for people that are listening to this, it's literally the middle of March.
Yeah.
And it is not the middle of March for us.
Oh, it's also weird to operate in that brain space too.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, lately we've been doing so much work on these that I'm like, I don't even know what.
But don't worry, we're taking a couple weeks off after this because we got videos done. We got episodes through the middle of March, which is the longest we've ever had. I'm not going to say where we're at in time, space right now, but it is the furthest we've ever been ahead. Let me just say that. Guys, it's February 2023. No, I'm just kidding. That would be wild. But yeah, so I have this memory, and maybe one of our
I do feel like you're right, though.
It had something to do with like some entity or something like that luring a kid out and them freaking out, like the siblings freaking out or something like that. And then hearing this story from the kid, like, oh my God, it got him and it lured him outside. And I want to say it was like kind of like maybe a ranch or something like that, like something that had forests around it. But I don't fully remember the entire story. But again, it's a similar, and even the second story that I put in here is the same situation. Because I was like, there's different stories about dwarves and stuff, but I really wanted to kind of hammer home this idea of entities, small, tiny men or whatever. Sounds creepier when you say it that way. Trying to lure
tiny
humanoids.
Okay, that'll work.
Yeah. Trying to lure children outside and being, tricksters in nature, sure, but also kind of mischievous and at the same time, like malevolent.
I still don't get the malevolence.
You might get it from this one.
Okay.
This next one is called Bad Guy at the Window, and it's by Land Shark Jeff. It says, when I was young, probably 4 to 6, and again, same age range, where it's like around anywhere from like 4 to 10 years old is usually what I see this. But
all I got to say is as you have someone nearing 4 years old in the future, buckle up, Buttercup.
Right.
Their imaginations are something else. Or is it their imagination?
Exactly. Yeah, we have two vastly different approaches to that, but it's fine. When I was young, probably 4 to 6, I saw a creature I can only describe as being a dwarf. I saw him a couple of times, always through the window. At the time, I had 3 other siblings, but we didn't talk about seeing the man. He scared us, even to talk about, but we all saw him. I started talking about the little man with my siblings recently, and where we all remember similar interactions. In those days, we had windows that took up most of the wall. My strongest memory, happened when my dad was helping me put my pajamas on. I looked up and saw him. He was approximately 12 inches to 18 inches, clothed and real sinister looking. He had ratty hair, and looking back kind of reminds me of the Christopher Lloyd character from Dennis the Menace. He stood in the backyard at my bedroom window. He gestured to me, and I told my dad that there was a monster at the window. He stepped away from the corner of the window. My dad didn't look, though. He was helping me get dressed and kind of just went, mm-hmm. He just mm-hmmed my warning while trying to get my other leg into the PJs. Then the little man stepped back to the window. He waved at me in a menacing way and lingered for a moment. I tried to get my dad to look. I knew monster wasn't the right word. No, he's not a monster. He's a bad guy, I said. And he ran away again and didn't come back that night. My 2 older siblings saw the same little man, and my younger brother too, at different windows. My big sister, whom I live with now, started talking about our memories a couple months ago. She says that the little man appeared outside her window in the honeysuckle bushes often and leered at her. She was the only one who had her own bedroom. She had a lot of fear in her life stemming from him. My parents eventually replaced the full-frame windows, took out the honeysuckle, and then we moved when I was 7. I also live in California, and we did not live near the woods or anything, just a regular stucco house in a suburban neighborhood. Weird.
Sounds like my upbringing.
Same. The stucco houses. Ugh. Not very attractive homes.
And it hurts if you run into one.
Very much, yes.
Scratch you right up.
Seems fitting that that's where a dwarf would reside.
In California, in a stucco house?
Yeah.
Checks out.
Something that'll scratch you up.
It's the trickster nature.
I think it's strange that you can see something like this, and I'll put quotes around it for you, that you can see something like this that completely messes with the rest of your life, to where you constantly look back on that, and maybe not even constantly, but it comes back up in your memory. You're like, what the fuck was that? You know, it's like it's a type of trauma that for whatever reason stays with you. And I think there is a spiritual aspect to that.
I think as a person of Generation X, you need to shove that shit down and move on.
Trauma. Yeah. Well, that didn't really work out well for you guys, turns out.
Oh, it did not. But
here we are.
I'm still standing.
Well, you're actually sitting, so that's a lie.
I'm still taller than a dwarf or a little people.
That is true.
Even sitting.
That is something that you can hold near and dear to your heart if you must.
Take it to the bank.
I don't know.
I'm taller than a little person.
I think it's weird that if you quote unquote hallucinate something strange, that it can stick with you forever. You know,
I don't think that's weird.
But the fact that like it affects you on an actual natural plane for the rest of your life, right? Like it alters the way you look at certain things. Like for me, and this is a wildly different experience, but I got held up at gunpoint when I lived in Vegas, right? That alone, that 30 seconds of my life shifted how I interact with society from then on. Like to the point where now I get uncomfortable in large crowds. I get uncomfortable in rooms filled with people I don't know. Even going to Walmart a couple days ago, there's a bunch of thuggish looking youths, which this is Wasilla, so that happens.
And it's also Walmart.
Exactly. So you're bound to, that's why I usually go in the mornings when no one's there. But it's not even like a fear, but it's like an unsettled, like where you're just like on edge. You know?
I don't have that.
And so, but that happened just because I was held up for 30 seconds of my life.
I have been quote unquote held up with a gun. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure it was a gun, but I get what you're saying. In
your mind, it was a gun, right? Because
it could have been a gun. Yeah. So I don't believe it was, but it could have been. And, you know, so I get it, but also you have to find a way to get past it. Like anything.
Sure. I'm past it. I'm saying that there is.
You're not past it. You can't even go to the store.
That happen that keep me on edge. And it's because of that one. And same if you want to take it into the, seeing things, the paranormal experiences or whatever, it's because of those experiences as a kid that I had that I still sleep with some kind of light on. Like it doesn't matter. Like I'll dim it. I'm not like terrified of the dark, but I also know in my head because of what I've experienced, what is out there. And so you can say that's just like, trauma again, but it's just interesting to me that I can change drastically from the age of 5 to 35, right? But still hang on to these things that are embedded in me now. And for me, it's hard not to look at that as a spiritual thing. It's hard for me not to look at things that altered the way that I perceive things in this life or changed my perception on certain things or instilled fear in me for years and years and years and years as not a spiritual component.
I mean, fear does tend to be a spiritual thing.
It's just an interesting thing that I think about from time to time. Like it doesn't have to be crazy life moments that shift or alter your perception on reality forever. It can just be a tiny little thing in your life that happen. You're like, well, I guess I'm different for the rest of my life until you, of course, come to terms with things, find Christ or whatever. But we won't get into that.
Sometimes you'll never deal with those things because
it's a memory. It's always going to be there.
Also, other things are going on in your life. You don't have time to deal with every little trauma you had growing up.
Sure.
Or all the many traumas that come after you've grown up. Because
that happens.
We get all these childhood fears, but we really should have adult fears because being a child ain't too bad.
Taxes. That's the biggest fear of life, all right? That is what everyone needs to fear. Well, if you're a small business owner like myself, that's when the dread and trauma comes. Trauma. But
one more year of easy taxes for me, I think. And then I have the difficult shit.
I have one more year of taxes. I'll probably stop doing the business after this year. I don't even know if I'm going to do it for the rest of the year. I'm so tired of working and spending so much money on shit and just sales going down and down and down that I'm about to just drop the entire thing and be like, you know what? Fuck it. Your boy is done and freed and homeless, turns out, because I need it to pay my bills. But
I have thoughts on some of that stuff in the next year or two. So
there you go.
I think we should sit down and discuss it because it could be a prediction episode and just throw it somewhere.
A prediction episode on what?
Just the world.
Wow, that sounds daunting.
But just throw it somewhere in case, just so we have it, because I have some thoughts. But not for this episode. Anyway,
okay.
Let's get back to little things.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of little things.
It's a Bush song. Bush song, too.
Wow,
I think.
Little things in a bush, Christian? Come on.
Bush song. The band Bush.
I know the band Bush, but phrasing could have been better.
It could have been.
Anyway.
I don't know if you guys heard last week's episode, but if Scott didn't cut it out, there was one moment where he could not speak. I thought he was having some kind of mental issue.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Christian.
There was that word you said like 5 times.
Was it Kaczynski?
No, it was something else. I don't remember.
Are you sure? I thought, well, then there was 2 of them, but it's fine.
Yeah, you'll hear it.
We're definitely in the future, not 20 minutes in the future, like you may believe. Anyway, let's get into culture number 2, and that's the Menehune of Hawaii. And again,
you went all the way from Europe to Hawaii really quick.
I'm bouncing around. Your boy travels, okay?
You know that like a lot of the Celtic stuff isn't from like England and Ireland and all that.
Yeah, it's actually from Alabama.
Okay.
Just make shit up confidently.
No, the Celts come out of mainland Europe before they get to the places we're familiar with.
Sure.
So it's curious to see the similarities. Wait, we were talking about the Norse.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
Elves and Dwarves. We've covered a lot of ground. It's fine.
Either way, they all come from the same place.
Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, and I'm going to preface again, I mentioned it in the last episode, the Menehune, there is a lot of back and forth. Okay. And your boy is from California, went to Vegas, now live in Alaska, never to Hawaii once. All right. I'm picking stuff up off the internet. And if it doesn't vibe or jive well with you, you can correct me in a nice tone. If you rip into me, guess who's going to rip you back? It's your boy. That's not the way to do this. But I'm just saying that if I get something wrong, feel free to correct me, but be respectful about it.
Don't correct him just because he's not Hawaiian.
Yeah. And
just
also,
because his skin is pale, don't be a jackass.
Yeah. I understand that Hawaiians like notoriously don't like white people.
No, I think it's more of the way their islands have been taken over, which I get.
That's fine. I had nothing to do with that. I just want to remind everyone.
I get the anger, but don't come at us in a racist way.
Yeah, and if you say anything, all right, just be kind.
We totally respect Hawaii and the people of Hawaii.
Yeah, and
their folklore is top notch.
Yes, that's why. And I just want to preface again by saying that I'm probably like the number 1 shareholder of Hawaiian Rolls. All right, I keep that business afloat. So remember that when you want to knife me or whatever you want to do, it's fine. I'm just saying I don't have all the information. I'm gleaning this from what I could take off the internet. So if it's wrong, feel free to correct me and let our listeners know in the comments or something like that. And if you feel angry in your heart, fuck off.
Actually, you have reason to be angry, just not at us.
Nope, you have no reason to be angry. It's fine. We're going to go ahead and continue.
I know the history of Hawaii. You have all the reason to be angry, but not at us.
Christian is going to once again patronize you. That's fine. It's cool. He likes to take sides with everyone. I am saying, hey, chill out. The world's more fucked up than whatever you think you're going through. Anyway,
I'm not saying.
Now that we've prefaced that in such a loving way, here goes the Menehune. Their mystical and revered aspect of Hawaiian folklore, allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly after everything, deeply embedded in the cultural and spiritual heritage of the Hawaiian Islands. These small magical beings are said to inhabit the lush forests, hidden valleys, and remote areas of the islands. Believed to be skilled craftsmen, the Menehune are credited with building some of the most remarkable and mysterious structures in Hawaiian history, from ancient fish ponds to temples and stone pathways. The stories reflect a rich history, nature, and the supernatural, blending mythology with the everyday lives of Hawaiians. Menehune are often depicted as small, elusive beings roughly the size of a child, known for their agility, cleverness, and magical abilities. They are said to be both shy and mischievous, rarely interacting with humans unless their assistance is sought or a balance is disturbed. Their small size allows them to navigate the dense landscapes of the islands effortlessly, constructing complex structures with incredible precision in a single night. Despite their elusive nature, they are deeply respected and honored in Hawaiian traditions. In Hawaiian culture, the Menehune hold a sacred place as protectors of the land and creators of wonders. According to legend, they lived in remote areas where they built elaborate aqueducts, heiau, no idea, temples, and walls for agricultural purposes. One of the most famous examples of Menehune craftsmanship is the Kalahupa stream in Waimea, Kauai. Wow, nailed none of those. Where it is said that the Menehune constructed a 7-tiered fish pond overnight. Such feats demonstrate their exceptional knowledge of engineering and mastery over nature's elements.
Can I jump in and say that this didn't happen overnight? You don't build anything overnight.
Well, I don't, because I'm sleeping. But the Menehune, you never know. The Menehune are also associated with the concept of mana, or spiritual power, which is imbued in their creations. When properly honored, the Menehune are believed to bring good fortune, health, and prosperity. They are closely linked with the environment, living in harmony with nature and maintaining a balance between the spiritual and physical realms. Many stories of the Menehune involve their interactions with humans who venture into the wilderness. Travelers or builders who seek their help must show proper respect and gratitude. If disrespected, the Menehune are said to withdraw their support, leaving unfinished or poorly constructed projects. These tales serve to emphasize the importance of humility and the preservation of natural spaces. Additionally, tales of the Menehune have been passed down through generations by oral tradition. Hawaiians often share these stories during storytelling sessions, during gatherings, and around campfires, keeping the legend alive as part of their cultural heritage. These narratives are not only entertainment, but also serve as teachings on respect for the land, community, and spiritual balance. The Menehune symbolize the intersection of the human and supernatural, showcasing the importance of collaboration with nature's hidden forces. Their stories encourage modern Hawaiians to connect with their environment, preserving traditional practices while fostering a deeper understanding of sustainability and cultural identity. In contemporary Hawaiian culture, the Menehune continue to inspire respect for the land and community well-being. Many efforts are made to honor these mystical beings through rituals, artwork, and even conservation projects, ensuring their legacy remains a vital part of Hawaiian life. So, that's one take. The other take is a lot more grim, and you guys can look that up for yourselves if you're fascinated with that, or someone that is familiar with that can share that in the comments somewhere. I believe the first time I actually heard of the Menehune was from Morgan when she was on the show.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I thought we went over this with Morgan a little bit.
Well, she actually touched on, and it's interesting that I have a story. One of the stories here is similar to a story I feel like she told. It has like the same, like, remember you got to like strip naked and like fucking do all that stuff or whatever. Do you remember that part?
I do not remember that part.
Yeah. I remember it because it was so wild. I'm like, you have to what now? But yeah, we have a story that kind of shares that similar insight, and I'll kind of get into those now. The first one is by Architecture Girl, and it's called It Looked Like a Gremlin.
Before water or after?
Both.
Okay.
My fiance, who is not one to make up stories, swears he saw a Menehune dash across our living room floor on Friday afternoon. At first, he thought it was a rat. Kind of rude, since we have been dealing with some rats that keep coming inside through our doggy door. But this thing was around a foot tall, dark colored, and had arms and legs.
I feel like this person needs a cat, too, because their dog's obviously doesn't care about rats.
Very true. It completely freaked him out. He described it as looking a little like a gremlin. We have been having random things, small stuffed animals and ceramic figurines, completely vanish from my daughter's room over the past year. At one moment, the item is in its place, and we wake up the next morning to find it either gone or moved to a place that makes no sense. I know she's not doing it herself because she's genuinely afraid it's a ghost. Classic. Has anyone else ever seen what they think might be a Menehune or heard about a sighting from someone they trust? I only know stuff I've read about them online, and the information varies widely. Do they have a reputation for stealing stuff? I know this all sounds completely crazy, but we are not nutty people. A UAH professor and an accountant. I wouldn't be posting this if we weren't genuinely disturbed. Classic. Hey, just for the record, accountants can be nutty, all right? That's a lot of numbers.
Or assassins.
And professors can be nutty as well.
And big.
If you think of it, yeah. That I didn't even mean for that to be such a great reference to the Nutty Professor. Hilarious. Wow, way to go, me. Good job. I hope everyone's laughing at home. And if you're not, get your life together, all right? That's grade A shit. That's probably actually one of the tamer jokes I've told us, but it's fine. Gotta pat yourself on the back sometimes, you know? So yeah, interesting. That sounds like a trickster, right?
They all sound like tricksters to me.
I know. Isn't that funny? I could say that after every single one of these cultures. Doesn't this sound like a trickster?
I feel like some of these stories remind me of ravens. Another famous trickster.
True. Yeah, similarities for sure. Ravens don't have arms, though, but...
Not in their raven form.
Yes, of course. Raven magic.
And
Stranger
not like,
things have happened.
what is it? It's so raven. Not that kind of magic.
That's so Raven?
That's so raven.
That's psychic abilities, and we actually don't know if ravens have psychic abilities. They might. You know?
Sure seems like it.
It does kind of seem like it if you think about it. But... interesting. It's funny the daughter thinks it's a ghost. She's like, I know it's not my daughter because she's genuinely terrified that it's a ghost. Classic.
It's funny. She'd be more terrified over a ghost than an actual little person in the house.
One of those is much more terrifying, and it's the physical one.
I find Hawaiian mythology so fascinating.
It is.
But also, I mean, when we're talking little people, I'm trying to remember some of the history I've watched on where Hawaiians come from. And I think the original people that later traveled to Hawaii became Hawaiians, the Polynesians.
Yes.
I believe they came from Southern Asia, which would have been close to Homo floresiensis, which are the little people.
No, we don't need to call them names, Christian, but...
I mean, that's their name.
Homo what now?
Floriensis.
Floriensis. Sounds like a slur, but it's fine. Yeah, well, that's the thing is like some of the take on the Menehune and I very little did I look into the other side of that, but some of it is that these people were actual indigenous people to the land, got pushed into the mountains, disrespected and all this shit, and just pretty much taken over. And so they're not actually spiritual beings, but they were actual human being type people. So that's like where, you know, I can see some of the anger coming in from. And
well, but if they migrated from the same region, of course, the hobbit species is probably pre-human or early human time period, so it's a long time ago. But oral tradition could take some of these older stories and they could, you know, morph over the years and become something that's more what we get now. And in a lot of tales, not just with little people, but a lot of things that came to us from the ancient past and were passed down for thousands and thousands of years before we started writing them down.
Sure.
So it's just fascinating, the connections.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of feels like the basis for that theory is built on a false foundation.
Like what theory? My theory?
Yeah. It feels like it's based on evolution of some kind, and that doesn't really jive so well. But outside of that,
I mean, if you're into mythology, evolution would be wrong.
Sure. I guess there you have it.
Let's leave it at that. I'm not in the mood for a rant this wonderful day.
Christian, we've had like 15 different rants about religion in the past 10 episodes. Are you telling me that...
You've had rants. I just sit here.
No, you sit there and antagonize. You know what you do.
I don't try to antagonize you. I don't antagonize religious people.
Don't try to antagonize you.
It doesn't bother me that people are religious.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Do you have anything to say about any of that before we move on?
I am wrong.
Okay. So
fair enough.
Anyway, this next story is called Old Pali Road.
Oh.
And it's by iProxyMoron.
Old what?
Pali. 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 Who knows? Anyway. Menehune were weak but intelligent islanders that directly supported the Night Marcher warriors' movements, not the general Hawaiian armies.
Interesting.
Yeah. They were depicted as, and this person also prefaces with like, look, this is all just information that I was able to look like after my experience. This is what I found. Could be wrong, but this is what I believed. They were depicted as lucky and sovereign, much like leprechauns of the Irish. Again, I admit that my statement must be mostly incorrect after reading the enlightening comments in this thread. I speak for myself and most of my homies that grew up here. on what we all thought about the subject before the information superhighway of the internet was available to help paint a picture. Specifically, about a personal story, fresh out of high school, my friend group would go ghost hunting.
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
That sounds scary.
That does sound scary. It was honestly just a reason for us to hang out at night since we finally had cars. There was a night we got really scared on Old Pali Road after trespassing Morgan's Corner, looking for spooky shit. We legit heard the drums of the night marchers after going too far onto Kapu land.
I feel like Morgan talked about those drums.
Yeah. And what I'm saying, like, this seems eerily similar to what she heard from someone when she was in Hawaii.
Right.
We all stripped naked, both guys and Wahine, which I believe is women, laid down because that's what we were taught to do in that situation. Once we did that and the girl stopped screaming, the drums stopped. One of the guys said he thought he saw a, quote, midget with a stick and a warrior helmet.
And that's how he got to see his first naked girl.
Hell yeah. Disappear into the trees right as the noise and wind was over. We all agreed what we saw was a chief Menehune that decided not to curse us because of our honor. I know I've been in the dark about the true lore, just sharing a side story of what lots of us grew up with.
Wonder why you have to strip naked.
I forget, Morgan kind of went into it a little bit, but I kind of forgot.
I feel like it's almost like maybe if you strip naked, you show them that you don't have
weapons up your ass
or a third nipple or something that denotes evil, or I don't know,
this
man.
person has 3 nipples, clearly.
It's always fascinating the little things you have to do in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
When you come across something paranormal or spooky like this, there's different rules. You know, in some places you spit.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you do, what is it? You do the cross on yourself or whatever.
Sure.
It just depends on the culture, but it's fascinating all the little rituals you have to get you out of trouble when the spirit realm comes after you.
Yeah. Very true. Interesting take for the perverts out there that if you want to see naked girls, all you got to do is go hide in the forests of Hawaii and beat a drum.
Also, don't do that because you might die.
Yeah. But is it going to be worth it for you? I don't know. That's on you to decide for yourself. I'm not the pervert.
The internet, you can see them for free without penis. Well, I mean, you can make that choice too, but you don't have to.
Trauma.
You don't have to be out in the middle of the Hawaiian jungles and develop. Obviously, if you do that, the Menehune are definitely going to come for you because you're being disrespectful. Don't dress up if you're not a Menehune.
That is true. That is true. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get into the third culture and final culture of this episode, which is the Domovoi of Slavic cultures.
How is that spelled?
Domovoi. Could be Domovoi. But again, I'm not that dude. Sorry.
We're just dumb Americans.
We're Domovois, okay? We're Domovois. We the Domovois. The Domovoi are household spirits deeply rooted in Slavic folklore. Serving as guardians of homes and families, these small, mysterious beings are revered for their role in ensuring the well-being and prosperity of the household. They're tied closely to the hearth, which I learned is the stove.
Correct.
And the protection of family members, not because we've mentioned it 50 times in the last, handful of episodes here.
We had a little streak where it came up like every
story.
Yeah.
It was every story. I think it was the Christmas episode. Every story they mentioned a hearth. And the protection of family members, blending the mystical with everyday aspects of domestic life. The Domovoi embody the Slavic connection to the land, tradition, and the spiritual dimensions of the home. They are typically described as small, bearded men with simple, rustic clothing. They are often associated with the hearth, representing warmth, protection, and the heart of the home. While their appearances can vary slightly from one region to another, they are always perceived as benevolent beings who take a special interest in the well-being of the family they watch over. Some traditions suggest that they reside under the floorboards, near the stove, or in other out-of-sight parts of the house, keeping a watchful eye on the family's fortunes. Well, you'd have a very easy job here. You'd be like, well, there's nothing for me to watch, so I'm just going to go hang out outside. Like many mythical creatures, the Domovoi can have a dual nature. If they are respected and well-treated, they offer protection and prosperity and harmony. However, if they are neglected or offended, they may become mischievous or even malicious, causing bad luck, disturbances, or illness. This duality emphasizes the importance of maintaining a respectful relationship with these spiritual guardians. The Domovoi played a central role in the daily life of Slavic families. They were believed to be present during key household events, from births to celebrations and everyday chores. They were often consulted for guidance and protection, especially when it came to matters of health, wealth, and safety. Offerings were left for the Domovoi, to ensure their favor, small portions of food, drink, and other tokens of gratitude. Such practices reinforced the belief that the spirits of the home must be cared for, much like tending to a living member of the family. Moreover, the Domovoi were thought to have the power to influence the fortunes of the household, bringing blessings during prosperous times and turning their gaze away during misfortune. This connection between the well-being of the family and the state of the Domovoi highlights the deep sense of interdependence between humans and the spirits in Slavic culture. Various customs were observed to honor the Domovoi. On significant occasions such as New Year's Eve or upon moving into a new home, rituals were conducted to welcome and appease the spirit. Family members would leave small offerings near the hearth, third time in this story, speak to the Domovoi in respectful tones, and perform acts of kindness toward the home to maintain harmony. Failure to do so could provoke the Domovoi to leave, leading to disharmony and misfortune. In addition to honoring the Domovoi, Slavic families would often engage in practices such as sweeping the home's interior to remove negativity and invite the spirit's blessings. The Domovoi were seen as guardians not only of the physical home, but also of its emotional and spiritual well-being. They symbolize a broader Slavic worldview that emphasizes the sacredness of the household and the interconnectedness between the physical and spiritual worlds. They serve as a reminder of the importance of maintaining harmony within one's home and respecting the unseen forces that influence daily life. These guardian spirits are more than just mystical beings. They embody a cultural ethos that values tradition, respect for nature, and the spiritual dimensions of home and family life. In modern Slavic communities, while some traditions may have faded, the essence of the Domovoi persists in storytelling, rituals, and the reverence for familial ties and the sanctity of the home. Pretty interesting.
It's fascinating that, again, we talk rituals and the importance of rituals in our lives. No matter, like in this case, it's more of a nature type ritual where you're giving thanks in a way or giving something, food, to these whatever you want to call them,
demons,
for blessings and safety, which would make a lot of sense. Which we come across a lot in the stories. We talk about different even Bigfoot stories in the past. We've talked about Native Americans giving tobacco to them and stuff.
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme, and same with like all of these. It shows like an interconnectedness with the physical and the spiritual realms, like that seems to be a common theme amongst all of these. This one, it seems more tied to the household than the other ones we've covered, but pretty cool. And like a lot of the stories, again, it's kind of hard to find stories of these specific entities, but the ones I have found have either been really terrifying or really wholesome,
You'd probably have to
go to those places
or be able to speak one of the Slavic languages to really come across the good stories.
Exactly. But instead of that, we did find people that are from those cultures, possibly living out here now or in the States or whatever, that share their stories. And this first one, it's called My Grandfather's Home. It's by Rachel Ewok. I think there's something, possibly a Domovoi, who lives in our home. First is how our home was constructed. My grandfather, being Czech and familiar with legends, built our house in ways my father and I have always found baffling. First of all, the awning over the stairs to the second floor. It juts out so the taller men in my family hit their heads as they go up the stairs. Secondly, the fireplace in our home does not fit with the rest of the style. It was built as a fairly modern home in the 1940s, but the elaborate stone fireplace in the center of the living room simply doesn't make sense or match the rest of the home.
It would make more sense if you called it a hearth.
True.
That's why.
Yeah, then we'd be on board.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could chalk these things up to my grandfather not being that knowledgeable about architecture. However, his brother was a carpenter by trade, and my grandfather was very handy and always building things. So you would think that someone would have mentioned the awkward ceiling by the stairs or questioned his motives about the fireplace. However, when you consider the possibility that he was building things in a certain way to accommodate for the house Domovoi, perhaps it makes more sense. The stairs would be a small place where you could potentially hide away. The hearth, hey, there we go, a traditional dwelling for the Domovoi, would make sense to be constructed in the way my grandfather did. Moving on, it has been said that Domovoi make their presence known by knocking on walls and doors. My childhood bedroom has a smaller door which has attic access through it. As a small child, I recall hearing bangs from the attic, and it frightened me so much that I insisted my father place a padlock on the attic door. Furthermore, our home has old pipes which creak and rattle as heat comes through them in the winter. However, could some of these sounds perhaps be the Domovoi?
No.
I mean, if that's the case, our house has about 1 million Domovois.
And if that's the case, all houses have them.
Well, there you go. We figured it out.
Yeah, especially in the north, because there's a lot of pops and creaking and cracking throughout the year when you're in the northern climates.
Yeah, it turns out the Rice Krispie elves also live in there. Anyway, other things that indicate we may have this house spirit dwelling in our home. I often would find unexplained, painless bruises all over my body, as do the other members of my family.
That's called life.
That'd be hilarious if you're just sleeping and a Domovoi just beating the shit out of you. Be like, all right, I'll see you later. My brother has experienced sleep paralysis. I often have the feeling of being watched. The list goes on. Another thing that I have been told that could indicate a Domovoi is that they sometimes appear as deceased relatives or the old family pet. I often catch glimpses of our old tabby cat out of the corner of my eye, or I could swear I hear her scratching on the door. She has been dead for 3 years, and before she passed away, I would often, quote, see our first cat who had passed away at least 10 years before. One other thing that may support my theory is that plants thrive in our household. Like, you cannot kill plants in our home. My mother definitely has a natural green thumb, as our yard is filled with beautiful gardens that she painstakingly cares for. However, the many houseplants we have in our home thrive even though she often forgets to water them. I read that a Domovoi can sometimes help with small chores such as keeping plants watered. I believe I also have my mother's natural green thumb. However, plants in my apartment die a lot easier than I remember plants dying at home.
Because you're watering them too much.
There you go. I have decided to seek information on this because I wanted to know if all this is coincidence or something could be happening in our home. I mentioned my mother has fallen ill and we have just been hit with a lot of bad luck. We have never acknowledged the potential presence of a house Domovoi before, but I wonder if we do have one, has he progressively gotten angrier since the death of my grandfather? He lived with us in the house my entire life until he moved into a nursing home and passed away about 4 years ago. Was my Czech grandfather doing something to appease the house spirit? He always used to tell me stories, but I can't remember mention of anything like a Domovoi. Perhaps if he did, I chose not to remember that story because as a child, a small elf living in the house may sound a bit scary. My grandfather was not a religious man, and I can't really imagine him believing in something like a Domovoi, or perhaps his aversion to religion was simply because he knew about supernatural things that the Christian church didn't allow for. I have tried to research these spirits online, but I can't find much about them. I know all of this sounds pretty crazy. I don't know if the paranormal community would acknowledge the existence of a Domovoi. Is a Domovoi potentially, quote, less real than a poltergeist? Hopefully no one laughs too much at me. I have always been interested in the paranormal, but this sounds far-fetched, even for me. Well, it sounds like you got a Domovoi in your house, friend. I'm not laughing. Christian's over there snickering a bit, but that's fine.
To me, it sounds like you have an imagination.
Ah.
Or a yearning. Like sometimes the way people, I don't know how to word this right, but that's not the word. The way we look at things like this paranormal, it's like we need that spiritual part of our life, even if we're not religious, or like in Europe where they tend to have a healthier relationship with religion than Americans.
Ooh, that's a hot
Shots
take.
fired.
That's a hot take right there. And I don't know if I'd say that right now, but it's fine.
I will say that. Only because they've gone through a lot of the religious wars that we haven't in this country. So they just have a different view of it. But either way, it makes me wonder if when we don't have that spiritual aspect in our life, we're looking for it in Domovois or whatever, however you say it, or little people. I'm not knocking the belief in this, but for this person, I am knocking their belief a little bit because it sounds like they're reaching on some of the things. Like, was my grandfather keeping them at ease? My mom, they're helping us water the plants. I'm like, no, your mom probably forgets to water them, and that's a good thing because humans overwater plants.
That's what they tell you, to keep you from believing in Domovoi, no doubt.
Right. You got to give the Domovoi something to do. So don't overwater your plants. He'll come along or she'll come along and help out and feel needed and be happy.
Can you picture like walking into a room and seeing a tiny Domovoi holding a tiny water can and just like 3, maybe 4 drops of water come out of it? Be like, oh, time to refill.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be something to keep in my heart forever.
I'd buy him more plants if I walked in and saw that.
I'd get him a bigger watering can. I'm like, can you lift this? Here's a 2-ounce cup.
You don't want to see, that's the thing is, like, in our modern age, everything's so easy. We don't have rituals.
Wow.
You know, and this Domovoi obviously needs a ritual, needs something to do. And maybe that's what all these little people or poltergeist or ghosts need, is something to do.
Or demons. You can't leave them out.
Yeah, I can, because they don't exist, but the others might. Demons are real.
Sounds like they exist, Christian. Isn't that weird?
Real in your head.
Made it up. You made it up.
That one takes me back. I am wrong. That last song took me back. I felt like I was a child in my parents' car with them playing music.
It's quite the bop, you know? You know what's really annoying is when we work on TFT, the musical episodes, I will have those dumbass songs stuck in my head for days after we record one. Like I had Demon Get Out stuck in my head and we played like 15 seconds of that on the episode, and it was stuck in my head for literally the entire, I was washing dishes, Demon Get Out. I'm like, okay.
I think I'm lucky because when I go to work, we play music all day.
There you go. You get to wash it out.
Yeah, with some Kendrick Lamar. No Drake.
Yeah. You've mentioned you have a weird beef and weird alliance to Kendrick Lamar.
I don't have it. It's just that some of the people I work with are into that beef. So I'm like, it just.
So now you're into that. You're like, well, I too have
some of it's rubbed off on me.
I bet it's rubbed off on you, you pervert. Anyway, we're going to close it out with this final story. It's called Death in the Family. A little depressing to close it out on, but that's fine. My mother was from Dalmatia. Once when I was quite young, her parents were visiting us in California. We had just returned from a day out, and when we got out of the car, the sounds of a child sobbing were quite audible and seemed to come from the back garden. We all stood there as my father checked crawl spaces under the house, a cellar, the attic, and tapped walls to find the source of the crying. Suddenly, my grandmother said her brother in Croatia had died. She just knew it. So she made a phone call, and indeed that is what had happened, and the crying stopped. When I was in my 30s, I discovered this little book and read about the Domovoi, which this book says attaches to the family, not necessarily the house. I called my mother and read aloud how this little house elf sobs like a child whenever someone in the family dies. My mother was astounded. I remembered this event from 3 decades earlier, and we both marveled that my grandmother had brought a Domovoi with her to California.
Do you think a Domovoi is similar to
Dobby the house elf?
Yeah.
Yes. And I have never watched Harry Potter, but I somehow knew you were going to say that and knew where to take it. Because, again, I can see the future 10 seconds in advance. Sorry, it's a magical power I possess.
And fun thing, too, I bet you all you listeners, well, some of you probably did, but now you know where Dalmatians come from. Croatia.
Yeah. There you have it. Isn't it kind of like, I don't know, if that's a coincidence, that's a pretty big coincidence, right?
What is?
You get out of the car. You hear this audible crying coming from the garden. Your dad is looking all over the place, crawl spaces, attic, everywhere, right? You can't see anything. And at that moment, your grandma is like, my brother's died. Randomly, right? Just, my brother's died. Well, I'm going to call and find out. Calls, yep, he died. And then as soon as she gets off the phone, the crying stops. And then years later, finds this book, and the guy's like, holy shit, this Domovoi is like it latches to families, not so much just households, and it's known to be crying audibly when someone in the family dies.
Okay, let's have a thought experiment for a second. If
this sounds painful.
If they attach to families, and some families report like hauntings that follow them around, maybe it's not a ghost.
Maybe it's ancestral spirits. Is that where you're going with
or
that?
Ancestral little people that attach to the family and look out for you. Maybe you need to leave a sock out and free this thing.
Leave a sock out?
You haven't watched Harry Potter, but we're going back to Dobby.
I was like, what the actual hell? Yeah. I mean, look, we live in a crazy world. Can anything happen? Sure. Let's say sure to anything.
No, can anything happen? No. But some things do happen.
Some things do happen. That is actually proven. That's verifiable information. Coming right from the source. And that's really all I got. So that's the first. Those were kind of fun. Those are interesting. It's interesting to look around culturally and be like, hey, what's everyone say these things are? But that last one actually had a little bit. The Domovoi actually felt like it was slightly different than the other ones. Everything else kind of had a theme with it, but this had specific elements about it that was different from the others.
I always feel like, especially when you're talking to little people, it's related, but it's morphed over the years and through cultures. That's why I say when you go back, maybe there were little people, and maybe there still are. I mean, if people are still out there talking about that there's a Bigfoot, which to me would be an ancient thing,
of course,
that may still be walking around or has walked around in our recent past, and maybe this is something similar. And in our modern way of viewing things, we kind of lose connection to this stuff, lose connection to the spirits of Earth, the Earth spirits, that just the natural things.
What if, since we live in America, that's why you don't believe any of this shit? Because it's kind of all like watered down horse shit in America, right? It's not factual or scientific. What if you moved somewhere that these things were talked about more and believed more? Do you think that your opinion would shift on them if you actually lived in that culture where these things were apparently seen all the time? And
no, not unless
I think you'd have a bigger shot of actually seeing one, and then that might, or you'd be like, oh my God, they've infiltrated my brain, you know? It's over for me.
I don't know, man.
We'll find out someday when America ultimately collapses and we're living on somewhere in Portugal or something like that, you know? I could see that. That'd be nice.
Portugal might be decent. There's probably other places I'd rather live.
They might get a little... Actually, there's a place I saw, I believe, in Switzerland that is paying people...
I've seen that too.
Yeah, like it was what, like $13,000 or something, and then like $2,000 a month for whatever. I'm like, because their population's decreasing out there. I'm like, hey, sign me up. Okay, I can live off $2,000. Well, maybe not in Switzerland. $2,000 is not a lot.
You'd have to learn new languages.
I don't talk to people. They got DoorDash.
We'll have to talk to Kevin Fiala of the LA Kings and see what Switzerland's like, because that's where he's from. He speaks 5 languages.
The man is cultured.
But also, when you're in Switzerland and you're neutral, you have to get along with all the countries around you. So you probably should learn all the languages.
But does he speak English?
Obviously he does.
Yeah,
You've seen his interviews.
I have seen his interviews. That's fine. Yeah, we'll just get Kevin Fiala on the horn. I'm sure he'll be ready and willing to take all the questions we might have about Switzerland and life. Actually, we have a few Swiss listeners, so how about y'all chime in? Do you want us out there? Das freaking Duken, or whatever we'd call it? What would the show be called?
I guess depending on the language you're using, that might be okay.
Yeah, we can go with Da.
I mean, Das is
more...
That's Germanic, but there's a lot
little heavier on the German.
But there's a lot of Germanic in the area. I think I'd like Sweden.
Yeah.
Southern Sweden.
There you go. We'll figure out where we're headed at some point.
Not anytime soon.
Well,
You're stuck with us.
We never know. But in the meantime, we'll catch you right back here next week on the Frinkity Dinkity, or Das Frinkendonken, or whatever I called it. Das Frukendinken? It's fine. You guys figure it out. What's it called? We'll see you later. Goodbye.
Bigfoot is stalking by your window. Dogman is scratching at your door. Ghosties are walking up and down your halls at night, and the Hatman is coming back for more. Your name is Christian, you love a can of beans, and you're the wettest blanket skeptic this world has ever seen. You're almost always wrong. It's quite an impressive streaky. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the Freaky Deaky. Your name is Christian, named ironically, because the only belief you have can be found in a can of beans. You're almost never right, and now you get roasted weekly. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the Freaky Deaky. Also ghosts exist, just an FYI. Aliens are feeling blue. The Ouija demon's lonely because they believe in you. You're named ironically, because the only belief you have can be found in a can of beans. You're almost never right, and now you get roasted weekly. This song has rambled on too long. Welcome to the freaky deaky. Also ghosts exist, just an FYI. Aliens are feeling blue. The Ouija demon's lonely, because they believe in you.